The Catholics of Oz is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to episode 67 of The Catholics of Oz. The Catholics of Oz is a show where we discuss faith, culture, and what's been happening from an Aussie perspective. Whether it's synods or science, apostolates and apps, providence or productivity, you can hear it right now on The Catholics of Oz. Hello and welcome to episode 67 of The Catholics of Oz. We were missing last episode. We took a bit of a break, so sorry that we didn't produce an episode for you, but we were getting close to the end of lockdown and also very, very busy and very, very stressed in some ways with all the things that were going on. So we needed just a bit of a break just to get our personal lives sorted out, I think, and our families and everything. But we're back and we're very, very happy to be with you again. And joining me today is the powerless Caroline Knight. Caroline, how are you going?
We have no power at home. It was such a big storm. When was it? Friday morning. And it blew trees down all over our street, across my driveway, and all the power blew out. And we are one of the sections of the power grid which still does not have power. So, yeah, I'm recording at our brother Paul's house today. He let us come over and invade his, I think his electricity bill's going to go up because we bought everything to charge with us today.
Yeah, so you were without power all of yesterday and without power again today. So fingers crossed and prayers said that it will be sorted.
Thank you. You should see the meltdowns when the kids realize they cannot play any devices. Wow.
What? We have to live natural lives and go outside.
That's
no.
right. That's it. Yeah.
And also joining us is I survived the storm, Lino Sabol. Lino, how are you?
I'm doing very well, guys. Oh, wow. Okay, from the time we're recording now, we are officially out of lockdown.
Yes.
And
we are.
We do not need to wear a mask outside. So
Yay.
that is one of the best things oh, yes, guys.
Hallelujah.
Look, unless we can't, what's it called? Social distance. That makes sense. But, oh my goodness me, now I can actually take my mask off in public and just breathe.
Yeah.
Breathe maybe some pollution, but anyway, it's just breathing. Hey guys,
maybe put that mask back on.
I don't like real air. I'm putting my mask back on.
Oh, funny.
But it's great, guys. Was it last week we had our first we got out of lockdown? And then all our restrictions gone. Traveling was still we couldn't travel to regional places yet.
But that's changed since, I think, just about there now,
Yeah, well, actually, today, we can go to regional places today.
And the shops, retail is open.
Exactly. So retail has opened up and looks like we're coming to that COVID normal in a sense. And we just hope and pray and hope everyone can pray with us that we don't get into another lockdown because it's going to... Please get hit us hard. But I
can't do another one. I'm done.
I think most a lot of us
I'm really over it. I think we're the most lockdown place in the world.
Yeah, we are.
It feels like it.
I don't like that anyone has a better record than us, so we have to smash the record and be the most.
Melbourne needs to smash that kind of
World's
a record.
Most livable city, people. We've got to have the best of everything.
Yes. Exactly. We're my most sportly place, you know what I mean?
Massive
we love our sport,
hub,
so we're very competitive. So, for our lockdown.
And this is because we're now 80% vaccinated.
Exactly.
16 and above. So that's why they let all these restrictions off and we can have a kind of normal-ish life now.
Yes.
So
Yes. So it feels good, guys. It feels good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Things have drastically improved in terms of restrictions easing now compared to where we were a couple of weeks ago. So it's really good. Yeah, there's lots of going out. Family visits are back on. There are some limits to that.
Definitely.
But, I think 10 people in the home still.
It is still
we
10 people, but still.
We weren't even meant to have family visits at this time, but because people have vaccinated. So Victoria has just gone bananas with vaccinating. We're like, all right, we want this to end, please. And we're well on our way to 90% vaccination of our 12 and above population.
I think they're counting 16 and above though.
Yeah, is it 16 and above, not 12?
Yeah.
Okay. But we're well on the way anyway.
We're doing well. Yeah.
We're doing well. Look, I'd like to give a shout out to the Americans out there. Thanks for thinking of us.
Yeah.
Thank you for praying for us.
Yes.
And we're doing well. We're out of this, and we'll together. Once again, I sound like a politician. Together, we'll get through this, and I think
we're all in this
well.
together.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we can say we've all been through this together.
Yeah. We need a new song.
We need a new song. Yeah. Where's Ben Lee?
Sequel.
Oh, that's right. He was on The Masked Singer. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's roll on. So before we continue, first of all, we'd just like to thank you for listening to the Catholics of Oz, and to remind you that all of our episodes are shared on SQPN's Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. So you can like there, comment there, and share it there for the rest of Facebook if you think we've got something that is worth sharing with everyone else. And also on Twitter, where you can find SQPN's handle at SQPN. If you're new to listening to the Catholics of Oz, welcome. We'd love to have you as part of the show and joining us as well in being a listener. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, or your favorite podcast player. Don't forget that SQPN also hosts all of its shows on YouTube, including the Catholics of Oz. So just search for SQPN on YouTube and you can subscribe there and hit the bell to get notifications when new episodes are released. And also, we would love some wonderful 5-star ratings and some comments. We do see the comments when they come up, and we're so grateful for them on any podcasting platform that you're listening to, so that we can grow our community and we can meet new people and listen to them and hear what they have to say about our episodes. That really is what we're all about. So let's get to our first topic, guys. So a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the Take the Way of the Gospel initiative that's happening in the Archdiocese of Melbourne. So the reimagining of parishes into mission areas, and lay people working with their priests as missionary disciples, and that's the Melbourne focus. And today I'm actually going to go into the Church of Australia focus, because I think it was in our first or second episode, maybe 3 years ago, we talked about the listening process of the Australian Catholic Church's Plenary Council. So the church is having its 5th Plenary Council now, and a lot has been going on. So I wanted to give a bit of an update on what's happening there. And later on, we'll have to talk about the synod of the Catholic Church that's going on as well for the entire worldwide church, because there's implications there as well. But that's going to be maybe, I don't know, next year when I've got time to do some reading. I'm also writing an essay at the moment, so there's a lot of research I'm in research mode right now. So I wanted to very quickly just go back to talking about what the Plenary Council is. And I'm actually going to use some of their frequently asked questions from their website to do this. But essentially, in a country, a plenary council is the highest form of gathering of all the local churches in the country. And ours is in Australia is being held so that we can dialogue about the future of the Catholic Church in Australia. So there's the question about why are we having a plenary council. So what they say on their website is there are many reasons for having the council for the church in Australia. For example, Pope Francis has invited the local church to dialogue. The Contemporary Society of Australia has changed significantly. We had a Royal Commission into institutional response to child sexual abuse as well, and this has had a massive impact on the church. And so basically the church can't just now plod on like it always has. A lot has happened, a lot has changed. So the Australian bishops announced the decision to hold this plenary council, and Archbishop Mark Coleridge of Brisbane said that the church is not the presence in our society it once was. We need to take a measure of that and make decisions accordingly. The culture in which we have to proclaim the gospel is very different to what it was 20 or 30 years ago. So that's why this plenary council is happening. And there are 2 assemblies of the council. The first assembly just happened recently. It was meant to actually happen earlier. Well, I think it was earlier this year or even last year, but COVID changed everything. But throughout October, there was a 7-day gathering for online, as well as an online process this time, so a massive Teams meeting for this council, and there'll be another one in July next year in Sydney, hopefully in person this time. So that's why it's happening. The Plenary Council in Australia, it's gathering to consider the role and the mission of the Catholic Church in Australia with all the changes in circumstances that I just talked about. There was this discussion and reflection on how can the church meet the pastoral needs of the people of God, but also of wider society as well. So in 2017, it had listening and dialogue sessions. So all the church in Australia, everyone, and even people outside the church were invited to make submissions. So the question that was asked was, what do you think that God is asking of us at this time? And everyone was asked to participate. So parishes could run large group sessions, small group sessions. Individuals could contribute. People who are not Catholic were invited to contribute as well. Anglican churches made submissions. Pentecostal churches did. People from the Jewish faith tradition, secular, people who are just not religious at all for whatever reason, different walks of life, were all invited to make submissions and were, and in some cases sat down with other Catholics in order to share their ideas and so on. So overall, there were 220,000 participants in Australia who, from all around Australia, shared their different views. So what happened then was all of these views were, and all of these submissions were read by a working group. So basically, not by bishops, bishops as well, but by a working group that was set up to then read and discern and have a look. So there were 6 different themes that had emerged, and these 6 different themes were then put into what's called an instrumentum laboris, or an instrument of work, but we would know it as a working document. So the working document is basically a distillation of all the different views put together that had been put together, and that had been contributed. So the working document was called Continuing the Journey. So it was fed into by 6 different reports that were put together by people who'd been commissioned to write those reports. And Father Kevin Lenihan, who's a priest in Melbourne, he said that the Instrumentum Laboris, it reflects a lot of the beliefs and echoes the voices of the Church of Australia. He said that was emerging as he and others were reading and putting these together into the submission, which then became the Instrumentum Laboris. So the working document that then guided what would then become what was discussed at the what would be discussed at the Plenary Council. So the first thing is then these 6 themes. So from the Instrumentum Laboris, guys, here's what it has. It has the themes of missionary and evangelization. So this was heard loud and clear from people in the Australian church. So it says here, although the credibility of the Australian Catholic Church has been challenged in the minds of many, both within and beyond the church, the love of God calls all Catholics to renew our commitment to share God's mission in our time and place reaching out to all people, including those of other faiths and other Christian denominations, reaching out to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, to the young and to families, and to our common home, the earth. So that is one theme that popped up, and that was a summary of what people had been saying. Another theme was that the church has been called to be more inclusive, participatory, and synodal. So despite some Catholics' experience of the alienation and hurt through the church, there is a deep desire for the church communities and agencies to imitate the inclusive and invitational presence of Jesus in our society, with particular care for and concern for the poor and the vulnerable, for the young, for family life, and for the diverse ranges of rites and spirituality within our Catholic family. The next theme was that the church needs to be more prayerful and Eucharistic. So they went on to say that people were saying that, like the disciples on the road to Emmaus, Catholics in Australia learn to recognize the presence of Christ in the experiences of loss and disillusionment and the experiences of conviction and joy as the journey through life. Like some of those disciples, they also encounter Christ in the breaking of the bread, so referencing Luke 24, as they celebrate the Eucharist together. Another theme was the church being more humble, more healing, and more merciful. And this is modeled on the humble, healing, and merciful ministry of Jesus. Church communities in Australia are challenged to touch the wounds of those who suffered abuse, wounds of First Nation peoples who have been dispossessed of their land and culture, of the unborn, disabled or frail elderly, of refugees, those who are trafficked, newcomers to Australia, those with mental illness, and those who have been marginalised. And the church is being called to work for a revolution of tenderness in these areas. Also a church that is joyful, hope-filled, and a servant community. The church is being called to be at the service of all. The challenge is to strengthen local parishes and schools in the service of church members, including Catholics who are estranged from the church, and to engage positively and pastorally with the wider community. Massive echoing there of what's happening in Melbourne right now, the discussion that's happening in Melbourne about our parishes. Also a church that is open to conversion, renewal, and reform. There are both internal and external calls for institutional reform within the Catholic Church. However, effective reform requires a renewal of culture, which flows from an ongoing conversion to the person and the mission of Jesus Christ. And the last theme, actually that was the last theme, so there we are, those are the themes. And basically with these themes, the idea was that these represent what people have been saying. These 6 themes that I've just summarized here are just 1% of the instrumentum laboris document. There is a whole lot more, and it's on the Plenary Council website and people can have a look at it. So what happened from there was that these themes and this whole document fed into the agenda that became the agenda for the first meeting that the bishops had in October. Oh, sorry, I should say bishops and delegates, because there were over 300 people that were present as well online. Now, what this means is that everything that I just mentioned that came out of the listening process, that became the agenda to be discussed at the Plenary Council. So the Plenary Council is not a top-down process where some bishops decided what needed to be spoken about. It was fed into by us as lay people, and from that, and from everyone else who wanted to contribute as well. And from those contributions, that then became what they spoke about. So there were 6 topics that were then part of the agenda, and they were conversion, prayer, formation, structures, governance, and institutions. And so that was what became the overall themes being discussed. And then these were turned into 16 questions. And these 16 questions then became part of discussions. I'm going to summarize these 16 questions very quickly because it is important to understand what has come from the people to the minds of church leadership and has been discussed now in discernment. So under the topic of conversion, there were questions like, and I'm going to summarize these very briefly, so I'll speed through them. There was, how might we better accompany one another on the journey of personal and communal conversion? How might we heal the wounds of abuse, coming to see through the eyes of those who've been abused? How might the church in Australia open new ways to Indigenous people of being in Christian spirituality, theology, liturgy, and missionary discipleship? And how can we learn from First Nations peoples? How might the church in Australia meet the needs of the most vulnerable, going to the peripheries and being missionary to them, especially places that have been left behind in Australian society? How might the church in Australia respond to the call to ecological conversion? How can we express and promote a commitment to an integral ecology of life in all of its dimensions, with particular attention to more vulnerable people and environments in our country and region? Under the topic of prayer, the questions were, how might we become a more contemplative people, committing more deeply to prayer as a way of life and celebrating the liturgy of the church as an encounter with Christ who sends us out to make disciples of all nations? And how might we better embrace the diverse liturgical traditions of the church which make up the Catholic Church and the cultural gifts of immigrant communities and their spirituality in the worship of Australia? Or worship in Australia, I should say. Formation, that was the next topic, and the questions were, how might we better form leaders for mission, adults, children and families, couples and single people? How might we better equip ordained ministers to be enablers of missionary discipleship? How might formation, both pre and post ordination, better foster the development of bishops, priests and deacons as enablers of the universal Christian vocation to holiness? Under the topic of structures, how might parishes better become local centres for the formation and animation of missionary discipleship? Again, a lot of what's happening in Melbourne right now. How might the church in Australia better be structured for mission, considering the parish and diocese and religious orders, etc.? Under the topic of governance, how might the people of God, lay and ordained, women and men, approach governance in the spirit of synodality and co-responsibility? And how might we recast governance at every level of the church in Australia and a more missionary key? And lastly, under the topic of institutions, how might we better see the future of Catholic education and through a missionary lens? And how might we better see the future of Catholic social services agencies and aged care ministries as key missionary and evangelizing agencies? So there's a lot there. As you can tell, this is a massive, massive process that's going on. So that was the agenda that was discussed. So what happened was there were over 300 delegates that gathered online in a massive, massive series of Teams meetings from October the 3rd to the 10th. It was really important to the participants that although there were a lot of meetings, that prayer weaved through everything, that this was a spiritual exercise, not just an administrative one. So every day there was an opening mass led by a different bishop, and then throughout the day there were opportunities for prayer and what was called spiritual conversation. At the opening mass, Bishop Tim Costello said, "I want to be so bold as to say that the goal of the Plenary Council is to return the church to Christ and return Christ to the church as well." So that was, and he's the president of the council, so that was one of the things that he said. The council was described as not about being about parties, like political parties coming together and debating and undermining and trying to set an agenda. It was about everyone coming together to have conversation. And again, the bishop described it as work that we need to do on our knees. So it's not about approaching from a position of power, but it's about approaching from a position of submission to Christ and God's will, and discerning God's will for the church in Australia. So what happened was there were sessions. So there'd be that mass. There'd be a 2.5 hour listening session. So whoever moderated the session would allow different people to speak every day over those 2.5 hours, and people would speak and listen. Anyone could make a contribution to talk about what had been happening in the previous day. Every afternoon, the working groups would get to work. So there were different working groups that were pondering the 16 questions in those areas. And the working groups, those small groups, their job was to come up with concrete proposals, start making concrete proposals that would then be discussed in these 2.5 hour plenary sessions. So what happened was the conversations were guided by what's called spiritual conversation. And this is something that's become a little bit new to me. I've been hearing a lot about these spiritual conversation exercises. And the whole idea, again, is that while there is administration going on in these meetings, it is not purely administrative. It needs to be a process of discernment. So spiritual conversation has its origins, I'm reading from another article here, has its origins in scripture, in which we see countless examples of important conversations and moments or periods of discernment. Such examples could include things like Genesis and run all the way through the Old Testament. In the Gospels, we read many important conversations Jesus had, including with the Samaritan woman at the well and with the rich young man. One of the important conversations in the Gospel is between the angel Gabriel and Mary in the Annunciation. This conversation is the very model of the steps in discernment. Also, because the person who wrote this article is Brother Ian Cribb, he's a Jesuit. He talked about how in the Jesuit discussion and spirituality, spiritual conversation is very important in part of what they do as well. So the important thing in terms of spiritual conversation and coming to a decision is really that every participant needs to commit to talking less and listening more. So that's kind of how it works, and it's a prayerful discussion as well. So it says, we work from the premise that the Spirit of God is at work in the world, in the church, in our mission, and in every person. Our desire is to see what the Trinity is trying to do in the world today and to better collaborate in God's mission. By doing that, we are entering into spiritual conversations. Without prayer, discernment is empty. We remain in our heads only. So the non-negotiable is the intentional listening and the intentional speaking, and that both of those are non-judgmental, and they should all have a sense of respect for the other in listening to what the other has to say. So when a group enters into spiritual conversation, it leaves room for the Holy Spirit to work. It builds a sense of community and trust. It enhances the respect for one another, and it provides a chance for people to speak without interruption, something that can be very hard to find today. It avoids having one person dominate the conversation, and it allows us all to listen to each other and learn from one another as well. So that was the guiding model under which the conversations happened. So what actually happened, I guess? What were some of the things that actually happened as a result? So I'm not going to go through all 8 days because that would take us a very long time. However, if anyone wants to watch what happened, all the meetings in the morning were recorded, not the afternoon sessions, but all the meetings in the morning were recorded, and they can be viewed online on the Plenary Council website, which is in our show notes. So I'm just going to do a really quick summary from an article that I'll put a link to as well in our show notes about some of the proposals that did come about. This is not everything, and this is not the finale. There's more to be discussed at the next session. So it says here, there was an impassioned call for prayer for the future of our common home, a gospel for the home of our future generations. This was part of the final reporting of the Plenary Council members. The presenters' comprehensive reports on the 16 agenda questions included proposals and requests for further investigation and research to create a more missionary Christ-centered church in Australia. So if you distill everything, that's what the reports of the working groups finally came up with as a theme. However, when we break it down, there are a few other things as well. So in presenting her group's proposals, for example, Catherine McAleer was emotional as she concluded her summary of the question on responding to a call to ecological conversion. She said that the group sought acknowledgement of the primacy of ecological conversion, personal and communal, and asked for the explicit adoption of Pope Francis's Laudato Si action plan as a vehicle for that conversion to a church openly committed to God's creation. Sean De Silva said his group discussed ways of creating a culture of conversion for renewal and mission through truth-telling, storytelling, and proclaiming the gospel for renewal throughout the personal and communal conversion. Specific proposals from this included parishes establishing small groups that meet for an annual synod, and that each diocese should have a synod at least once every 3 years, studying and learning from the synodal journey that resulted from the Uluru Statement of the Heart. So then moving on, it says here that Sabrina Ann Stevens reiterated the need to determine an appropriate process to support the Uluru Statement from the Heart so that the First Nations voice could be heard in the church and also in our nation as well. Father Trevor Trotter told the Assembly that there was some discussion in his group about the full understanding and appreciation of the Eucharist as the real presence of Christ, body, soul, and divinity, being in a state of decline in Australia. He said, "We acknowledge that one of the challenges that we face is how we might better welcome God's people to the Eucharist and assist them to understand what this sacrament offers, entails, and asks of those who receive it." This same group that he had also recognized the need for a more organized and coordinated approach at a national level to the inclusion of the Eastern churches, rites of the Latin Church, and culturally and linguistically diverse communities throughout Australia. He said, "We do not do this simply for the satisfaction of those churches and communities, but rather for the richness and gifts that diversity brings to the entire church." Then Brother Peter Carroll gave a detailed report on his group's discernment on formation for mission, leadership with specific ideas to achieve this. It started from an understanding that the mission of the church is the mission of Jesus, which is to make the reign of God a reality, to incarnate it in our place and in our time. Then on ordained ministry, Bridget Cooney said her group suggested identifying elements in the current formation of seminaries that are positive and valuable, but also elements that are problematic and can produce ordained ministers that are not living in a way that draw people to Christ. And one proposal was for research into international models of seminary pre-ordination formation programs and lifelong formation that have proved successful in other places around the world. So moving on, because there are a lot of things that were discussed here, members also recognized the need for opportunities in ministry for lay Catholics, for single lay Catholics, for example, having a genuine lay apostolate that fosters community, which is different from young adult or family ministry. Dr. Mark Copeland spoke about his group's discussion on governance, leading to more effective proclamation of the gospel, which led to two specific proposals. The first related to Canons 127 and 129 of the Code of Canon Law, which I'm not going to read today, particularly regarding the inclusion of the concept of consensus in legislation. The second recommends that councils for example, finance and pastoral councils, particularly at the parish level, be given a deliberative vote rather than just a consultative vote on different matters. So the group recognized that lay people already exercise this power in some contexts, but suggested that this could be improved through legislation. However, there's a distinction in terms of the word power that was really, really emphasized. It said, while civil society thinks of governance in terms of power, the root of governance in the Catholic understanding is service rather than power. Christ washes the feet of his apostles before he gives us the ultimate gift of love. If we work in a spirit of synodality, love must come before power. Then Virginia Burke said her group proposed using the governance report, The Light from the Southern Cross, and responses to this report from various groups to develop a governance framework that would be adopted by the Plenary Council in the Second Assembly. Then Danielle Fairthorn said her group engaged in rich discussion about the convergences appearing throughout the week on the topic of Catholic education, 3 themes emerged about Catholic education, and they were mission, witness, and encounter. She said, it becomes clear that the team believes a working group needs to be established to respond to the themes above through a clear roadmap. So, and then there were also recommendations about Catholic welfare agencies and linking them more to Catholic social teaching, and that's barely a scratch of some of the proposals that came out from just that first session. So there is a summary on the media, the Catholic media blog as well, about everything that happened. I'm not going to read the whole summary. It's only 2 pages, but I think Catholics in Australia, if you want to know overall what happened, it's really, really helpful to have a look at it. But I'll just read a couple of key points. The first one is the introduction, which says, as we conclude the first General Assembly of the 5th Plenary Council of Australia, the process of discernment continues. From the opening Mass to the closing of the Assembly, our prayer has been, Come, Holy Spirit. The call to hear afresh the good news of Jesus Christ through a spiritual posture of deep listening has been a central element of the preparation of the plenary process and a distinctive feature of this week. We adopted a regular pattern of prayer and spiritual conversation throughout each day. This slow process of deep listening allows space for still nascent dreams and visions to come to a greater maturity. As many of the personal interventions demonstrated, there is no shortage of passion and charisms among the community of believers. These interventions covered a wide range of complex realities of the Church and Australian society in the particular moment of our history. They express personal wisdom and aspirations that have been a gift to this Assembly's deliberations. Many elements of the Council's agenda were carefully considered. Discussion of other issues include some not formally on the agenda, and this was as this was initiated, this requires more time to think about. We listened to the confronting and important voices of victims and survivors of sexual abuse in the Church. They reminded us of the great wounds and failures of the Church and its continuing need to discern pathways of true healing and renewal. The missionary vision of Pope Francis has both inspired and infused all the deliberations of this first assembly. Missionary discipleship has been a key theme, as has the call to go to the margins. Another reoccurring theme, expressed in different ways, is the need for ongoing processes of ecclesial listening, which can form and inform how the Church lives its mission today. The Assembly also considered how all people might feel at home in our communities, regardless of their particular circumstances. Various voices drew our attention to young people, women, single people, parents and families, people with disabilities, people with diverse experience of sexuality and gender, and others who feel, for a variety of reasons, that there is no place for them. We asked how a missionary church might connect with those who feel distant from the community of faith. In faith, hope, and charity, we entrust all of these tasks to the guidance and wisdom of the Holy Spirit. Our prayer remains, as always, come Holy Spirit of our great Southland. So that's a summary, and it's not even a complete and comprehensive one because so much happened at the plenary council. I'm actually going to go over the video after I finish the essay that I'm writing. I want to go over the videos just over a period of a couple of weeks and listen and reflect to what was said by the different delegates. There were over 300 delegates at the council, including bishops, priests, lay people, and people from all different walks of life. The next session, and the final session from what I understand, is going to occur in about 9 months in Sydney on July the 4th to the 9th in 2022. And they're going to consider, so now there's a period of discernment that happens and a period of more listening and a period of throwing out what's been said into diocese and asking for more discussion and feedback. And there'll be more discussion. And I'm assuming, I think, that some concrete decisions and ways forward will then be made about how the church in Australia will be more Christ-like, better show the face of God to everyone in Australia as well. So there's a whole ton of links and resources that I've put in the show notes that people can have a look at to consider and reflect on what's been happening. And I think for Catholics in Australia especially, it's really important that we pay attention to at least a little bit of what's going on in the plenary council, because this impacts us. This is the church listening to us and what we've said. And this is the church trying to reconfigure. It doesn't change church teaching. It doesn't do anything controversial. But what it does is it is reconfiguring what the church looks like and empowering us to be able to do mission better, just like what the Take the Way of the Gospel initiative is trying to do in reimagining our parishes and how our parishes can also collaborate better to go out and be missionary disciples as well. So I'm pretty passionate about what's going. I'm frustrated by a sense of wanting it to happen right now, I guess, but patience and prayer is obviously very key. But what the church is trying to do is help Catholics to become more missionary in their discipleship and their baptism, so that they can move from just sitting in the pews every Sunday. And that's not a criticism, but it's kind of where we settled a little bit now. But moving beyond that and being a church that is a witness of Christ and allowing the people who encounter us not to see us, but to see Christ shining through us. Amen. All right, so there we go. That was it. All right. I hope that didn't take too long. I apologize, but I'm trying to distill 8 days and 3 years of preparation also into about 20 minutes of a brief of what happened. But I wanted to throw it to you guys. You're lay Catholics just like I am. And Caroline, I'll start with you. What are your impressions? What did you hear in that summary? What are your thoughts on the Plenary Council so far?
Well, first of all, very well summarised.
Thanks.
That's a lot.
Wake up, listeners. I finished now.
No, but it's a good summary of what's been happening. And, this kind of thing kind of makes us realise what does go on behind the scenes. Some things perhaps that us lay Catholics are not always aware that there is work going on to reinvigorate the church, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And I guess the thing I like about it the most is that it's all inclusive of all aspects of the church, all people of all backgrounds. We talk about diversity and all that kind of thing. And it invites everybody to have a say, an opinion. And I really think that needs to be the way for the church going forward. It can't just be a couple of old guys sitting in Rome making all the decisions for us, because, the way that people practice their faith, keeping the core practice, of course, of the Mass and the sacraments and everything else. But, maybe the way we would, have our community is different to a way that another community would be, how they would express their faith will be different. And so, it's kind of really good to have everybody's idea and to get everybody involved and make people excited about their faith. Like you said, you don't want to just be the one. Okay, it's okay to turn up every Sunday and practice your faith. That's fine. But there's more to it. Like, what can we be doing during the week? Can we participate a little bit more? Is there something for us in the church that we didn't know we could do perhaps in the future? Is there something that we might like to take part in? Because it's easy just to go to church on Sunday, go home, forget about it for the week, and then, back to church on Sunday, forget about it for the week.
Church on Sunday, McDonald's trip with the kids, and then go home.
100%, yeah. And then, you start yelling at your kids all week again. So, is there more we can do? I like it. I like this thinking. I like that that the lay people are being given a chance to be more involved and so I think it's pretty good, pretty exciting. And I like too that it is taking time, because it's not something you want to rush. So they're really taking the time to have everyone's voices, to get everyone's voices, to have these discussions and to have the voices from the group discussions and the input and the ideas that come out of it, and and then slowly starting to put these things into action. So to me that's pretty exciting. I like it.
I also like that that prayer has been a key practice in all of this as well, not just in saying Mass. You could throw a Mass at the start of it, great, and Mass is so important in terms of setting the mindset of what this discussion is all about. But it's also been prayerful in the sense that the discussion has been deliberately prayerful in these spiritual conversations. I want to do a lot more research into this, because I'm actually really enjoying this concept. I've also seen it in the meetings that our Take the Way of the Gospel conveners in the regional meetings we've had. It started with this theme of spiritual conversation. So I want to update my knowledge a little bit on that and learn a bit more, because I think it's such an important and powerful practice that we could incorporate more into our into the daily reality of our church as we make decisions.
Yeah.
What if a parish council was a spiritual conversation? It probably should be anyway, but what if it was more deliberately a spiritual conversation?
Yeah, like more listening, less talking.
Talking, yeah.
I mean, you need to speak, but we need to listen and really understand what people are saying, and not just be, oh, that's my opinion and I'm just going to put it out there and just, that's it. I'm not going to change my mind. Well, how about we listen to each other and move on together, and let's create something amazing and beautiful together.
Yeah. Lino, what are your thoughts?
Well, hopefully this all goes well, Lindsay. Yeah, it's just it'll be a long process, and I just hope it goes well. That's all I can say. Just is this including our mission within the parishes as well, Lindsay? You were saying that too?
So that process is separate. So it's not a plenary council process. That's an initiative of the Archdiocese. However, it's really obvious that the links, they complement each other is what I would say. They're not, even though they're two separate processes, they're not separate in terms of intention and theme and the outcome that they want to see for the face of the church. I think it's actually really good that we're moving side by side with the plenary council. Rather than waiting for the council to finish and then saying, "Hey, mission parishes," it's actually good that the intention is moving side by side.
Exactly. Yeah, I just hope it goes very well. As like I said, we'll just take step by step and see how we go with it. We were like, you guys have just seen all the different changes happening in our parishes and masses, in a sense. And then there are different ways of parishes who celebrate mass as well. Is that what I'm trying to get to?
Yeah, so there was a discussion about the diverse way within Christianity. So we have, for example, Eastern rites, Maronite, the way that the Maronite community celebrates mass. There are some Latin mass communities. There are different communities. And I think one of the things they were talking about was, because right now they look like separate communities. So within the church, you've got, broken down into separate ones. And one of the discussions was, how do we get the richness out of all of these so that everyone benefits from it as well? So that was one of the things that's being discussed and discerned too.
Awesome. Yeah, I just hope it goes very well. That's all.
Yeah,
go bit by bit. And I think we've, as a community, have moved forward from other parts of the mass. I remember getting it very different in a sense. It's like from different popes? Is it from different popes that we've seen that there've been different directions of our faith and our not in the sense of faith, but the celebration of the mass? Is that I'm what I'm trying to get here is like I've seen that there's a different way of celebrating mass, because I remember back in the day it's like we didn't have much of a choir. You know what I mean? In our church now we do.
We used to try.
There were a few. There were some stumbles along the way, but they got there.
A few people who lead the singing every Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
And the old hymns. I don't know if we sing a lot of those old hymns anymore.
Not much.
Yeah, no. Depends who's running a choir, doesn't it? And what where they're comfortable with, how they can lead worship and things like that. Yeah,
exactly. Is it? I'm not saying they're trying to make a celebration of the Mass modern in a sense. It's more, are we celebrating the Mass in a way that connecting with spirituality and the togetherness of the community and the culture as well. Like you were talking about different cultures in our communities, and especially with the first people of Australia, the Aboriginals, that'll be an interesting part of our Catholic community and our faith. How do we include them? Well, they are included, of course. You know what I mean? They are there, but how can we walk with them, with our faith, and with them as well?
Yeah. Yes. So we know, we all know Father Anthony, and he's up in Northern Territory at the moment, and there he works. There's the big Indigenous community over there, and they do have an Indigenous flavour to the Mass, which is pretty good. He sent me photos and and images of processions at the beginning before the priest walks down, and his Indigenous dress and kind of that kind of thing, and bit of the Indigenous culture in the Mass, in this like Western Mass, which is like, traditional European style of celebrating Mass. So that was really nice. So there is some of that already. I guess we just need to, we can reflect all cultures, can't we, really, in our Mass? So,
a Mass can reflect the culture that it's in. That's, it's not because if you think about it, the Mass is, it has its roots in, and anyone can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but in Western European, society, sometimes, there's medieval elements and things like that.
Yeah.
And which is fine. That's not a criticism at all. Our Mass is our Mass and it's beautiful and sacred, but those elements need to speak to the cultures that they're in as well. They need to adapt to language of the different cultures, so they're comprehensible.
Lindsay, we used to go to Maltese Mass once a month as well. And Lino, you probably have, Mass for Philippine culture as well. So you can, I think that, when you celebrate it in your culture, it can have more meaning to you and more depth of spirituality because you're very comfortable with your culture, so I think there really is a big place for that in the church. And that is one small topic amongst so many topics that's being pondered. And going back to 2 points that both of you made. So Lino, your point about saying you hope it goes well and that there's a good outcome. There is it's been acknowledged that there's been a divergence of views. So people agreeing and disagreeing, which is good though. So if everyone just went there to agree with each other, we're in trouble.
Well, exactly. So there has to be some sort of a different opinions and people were saying, oh, maybe can we. What about this and that? The more the ideas, the more discussion. It's all good.
Exactly. That's right. So it brings a richness to hear from different people. Yeah. And then Caroline, you made a point which I can't remember now. Oh no, yes, I know now. Yeah. So about the thing about the missionary point of things. I forgot exactly how you said it, but I wanted to also throw in that responding to what you said before. I think generally speaking, and if any Catholic wants to tell me whether I'm wrong about this, I think Catholics generally want to do something with their faith. They want to do, like, how do I share my faith is the question. How do I know? How do I learn more about my faith? More than just listening to someone on YouTube. I mean, there are. How do I learn from a person in person? So it's great to watch a YouTuber or a Catholic bishop. It's good to watch these people online. That's all good.
Even our own Father Michael, he has his mission as well.
But these things are not in person. Faith is passed down from person to person. I know that COVID's kind of ruined that a little bit, but we benefit a lot from learning from someone who knows in person or by having spiritual discussions together.
Exactly.
And you can learn the head knowledge from watching a video. But what about what it means to do, about doing something with that knowledge as well?
You're right too. Yeah. And I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think, when we are called to be missionaries, like we're being sent out into the world, and sometimes we don't know what we can do. But I want to do something, but what do I do? I mean, for me anyway, I found something in this podcast, like we can share our faith through this podcast. And but before I wouldn't have had a clue. Like, I go to church on Sunday. What else do I do? Be nice to people, maybe, help people when they ask, or, try and do something with my immediate people that I come into contact with, and which is great. But I always wanted to do something more, and I didn't know what it was. But through this, I found that we could, share our faith. But through the discussions the church is having, there will be more opportunities, hopefully, that other people can join in and do the same thing, because people are passionate. You find Catholics are very passionate people about their faith. So, and I'm sure they all want to do something. So hopefully out of this process, there will be more ideas, sharing the ideas and more opportunity for everybody to do something if they want to,
Yeah, we all have a part to play in the church. We're all missionary disciples. We got baptized, we got confirmed. We're moved ahead with the different vocations that we have, and now we want to continue. We're doing this podcast, and it's great. I'm so grateful that we have a chance to do this every couple of weeks and share with people and inspire faith. And I'm sure there's more we can do beyond this as well. and we want to inspire other Catholics to do that too. And I think, I just feel like there's a calling in the heart of Catholics. They know that God is calling them to do more. And then the question is, where, what, how do I do it?
Yeah, how?
And so,
I mean, doing your everyday life is living, your mission as well. If you're a father, you're a mother, a single person, anything that you do is your mission. But like this will give us more of an opportunity if you wanted to do more. Like if you got a calling to do more but don't know what to do, hopefully there'll be something there for people who do want to do more. Yeah,
even something as simple as how do I discern what God is calling me to do?
Yeah,
because that's it's hard to do on your own sometimes.
It's hard.
It's the exposure to the community and to people who are good at discernment and helping others discern is also important as well. And we could talk about this for hours, I'm sure.
We could. We have.
We have. Yeah. All right. So, anyway, so there you are. We've broken down the council. You've heard some lay people talking about it and some ideas. And we'd love to hear what you think. Doesn't matter what part of the world you're in. If you're not in Australia, we still want to know what you think because you're a Catholic, you're a brother or a sister, or maybe you're not Catholic as well. We want to know what your thoughts on the moves of the church in Australia are. But now we're going to move on to talking about some science, Caroline. So you're going to be talking to us about did I get it right? The Chang mission to collect some moon rocks.
Yes.
And they have been brought back to Earth. So over to you, Caroline.
Yeah. So we know that China loves space as well as America and most countries around the world. So they've got some really cool missions going on at the moment as well. What I want to talk about is the China's Chang'e 5 Lunar Exploration Mission, which they had recently completed. So what's happened there is they've found some younger rocks on the lunar surface, on the moon's surface, than we thought was possible. But let me give you a bit of a background before I start talking about that. So the Chang'e 5 lunar mission is the fifth lunar exploration mission of the Chinese lunar exploration program. It is China's first lunar sample return mission. And it's actually the third lunar sample return mission by a country in the world. So that's pretty good achievement.
Yeah.
Previously, there were the Apollo missions by the United States and the Soviet Union's lunar mission as well. So let me give you a bit of a background here. The Chang'e 5 mission launched on November 23rd, 2020 from Wenchang spacecraft launch site and on Hainan Island. Now, probably we didn't heard too much about this, well, especially in Australia because COVID was happening, and I think that's what was taking the news, overtaking the news at this time. So I was pretty happy to read about this. It landed on the moon on 1st of December 2020, and it managed to collect around 1.73 kilos or 61 ounces of lunar rock sample, including a meter deep core sample. And they returned to Earth on the 16th of December 2020. So this mission was made up of a few different sections, and it's really worth to go through them because it's pretty interesting. So first of all, they had a lander. So on the lander was installed a drill and a scooping device. Then there was the ascender, which sat atop the lander. So after the sampling took place, the samples were transported and stored onto the ascender. Then the ascender launched from the moon's surface on the 3rd of December and docked with the orbiter, which had been orbiting the moon. The orbiter then received the lunar samples from the ascender, and the ascender was then released and fell back to the moon's surface. So it wasn't like just staying up as debris floating around the moon. They just wanted to put it down onto the moon. Then the orbiter left the moon's orbit and flew for about 4.5 days back to the Earth and entered into orbit around the Earth and then released the returner. The returner performed a skip, re-entry and bounced off the Earth's atmosphere before re-entering and landing on the Earth's surface on the 16th of December, 2020. Got a lot of extra sound effects for you today.
Caroline did her homework, everyone. She
definitely did.
Copious notes.
Yes, I have a lot of notes. I just think that mission itself was pretty interesting, with all the several parts working together and once again working perfectly to achieve sampling and returning sample back to Earth. So the rock samples that were collected off the surface by the Chinese mission are about 1 billion years younger than those samples that were retrieved by the Apollo mission.
Oh, wow.
The area it was collected was a region called Oceanus Procellarum, which is a smooth young plain on the moon's surface made of grey basalt. And it was produced when there was more activity on the surface of the moon caused by volcanoes and also heating caused by the gravitational influence of the Earth. You know, we're talking back in time when we're still talking about the development of the solar system and, you know, everything kind of becoming what it is today. Yeah. So the moon itself is about 4.5 billion years old.
Wow.
Which is just about, which is just about as old as Earth. And so the rocks found in this area are about 1.7 billion years old, which is quite young in terms of what's been found
moon
before.
age, they're young rocks. Yeah,
that's right.
Yep.
And plus or minus 50 million years. So like in science, you've got to have some kind of degree of accuracy. Yes, it's about 1.97 billion.
Shave off a couple of million years. Right.
And just as a side note, the way they date this is by using lead dating. You've heard of carbon dating for, organic material. So what they do is the amount of lead isotopes in the basalt are calculated using the rate of the lead's radioactive decay. And this type of dating has also been used to calculate the age of meteorites and also minerals on Earth. And they consider that the gold standard technique. So the Apollo mission rocks are about 3 billion years old, and there's also impact craters on the surface found on the moon's surface that are about 1 billion years old or younger. So for scientists, this 1.97 billion year old rock kind of filled in a chronological gap. So they had the really old stuff and the really young stuff, but nothing in the middle. And really this kind of is now helping them to develop a tool, scientists, that is, to develop a tool to kind of create craters on other planetary surfaces. So the great thing about our moon is that there aren't any processes currently that cause craters to be erased, and so they're pretty well preserved.
Cool.
And it allowed scientists to be able to estimate the age of different regions of the moon based partly on how many craters are in each region. So as a general rule, the more craters an area has on it, the older it is, because the craters have been hitting and nothing's kind of blown it away or covered it or anything. To verify, they wanted a process to verify age. So the rock samples were a really good piece of evidence for them to use. So the method of aging the surface rock and estimating the age of craters on the moon can now be applied to other planets, like I mentioned. So they use this idea of how many craters in an area and how old rocks are in the different areas. So it's been really good find for them. There's Professor Jolliffe, so he's one of the US-based scientists working in the area, says that using this model, they can say that surfaces with a certain density of craters can have a certain age. So you can probably see like Mars and Mercury have kind of good surfaces that don't really change either. So we can further apply it to aging their surfaces, which is really cool.
Can I just interrupt you there for a second? Sorry. Quick question, not a difficult one. So did you say that they came up with a new model or scientific method in the way that they put this mission together? Is that so? Like the number of craters and stuff in an area, is that a new method, or has this been done before?
So what it is I guess that this is a method that's kind of been developing. So you can generalize and say that an area that has a lot of craters is quite an old area. There hasn't been a volcanic process that is kind of like put lava all over the area, and you now got a new surface, so you're aging that surface. But if you've got an old surface, you can say, oh, that's a really old surface, and you're kind of getting the age of so we kind of can get a sort of age of the rocks in the area, or the a clue to how old a planet is, or that kind of thing. So
I just love that someone thought that up, though.
Yes,
it's been developed over time, but just that's what they thought up.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It. And because they had samples, really old samples, really young samples, now they have a kind of a middle sample. And so by having different kinds of surfaces and different kinds of rocks collected from the different surfaces, they're getting an idea of the different ages of surfaces, so they can kind of get a kind of age of when processes happened, and the kind of development of the planet. Like, this will indicate, so like we've got these 3 billion year old rocks developed when the moon was still quite young and hot. It was before it cooled down to be what it is now, just kind of either smooth in some areas where you have a lava plain, or pocked in some areas with heaps of craters. You can say, well, in the beginning the moon was like this, and in this area it was like this, so you can kind of say, we can kind of follow the progression of how the moon was and how it is now. You know what I mean? So these are just clues. So getting different kinds of rocks and the ages of the rocks give us clues to how something became as it is now. Does that make sense?
It does, and no pun intended. They've literally just scratched the surface of what they've discovered. I'm just trying to imagine that when we do eventually, and this is going to happen, when we have people living on the moon, study moon rocks available to them, how much more detail they're going to discover from doing that. Yeah,
exactly. So it'd be really interesting. I mean, it'd be cool when we finally do have moon bases and laboratories and all of that, just like you said. So as I was kind of saying, the finding of the 2 billion year rocks give us, the information about the volcanic history of the moon as well, meaning now that we know that there was volcanic activity about 2 billion years ago, as well as 3 billion years ago. So we had the 3 billion year old rocks, now we have the 2 billion year old rocks, and it's kind of a new piece of information we didn't have before. So we now have another clue to how our moon developed. And then, with this mission, they have actually saved some of the rock samples, because, when they collect rocks, it's just common practice that you don't use up all the sample. You can give some to different scientific communities who can perform experiments, and then you'll put some away for when future techniques are developed, so that maybe more sensitive techniques that we don't know about yet, and then can give us more information, which is pretty interesting. And I guess I'm looking forward to hearing more about any more information that comes out later on about the moon. So there we go.
Our future home or tourist destination.
Yes, I would love to visit the moon. I'd love looking at the moon. It's like, with the telescope, you're kind of walking in the craters of the moon. Imagine actually being able to do that.
Yeah, and in previous shows and on our Facebook page, you've shared your photos of the moon from your telescope, Caroline. It's really fascinating. And like the detail that you can get, it's just amazing to look at it.
And you don't have to spend a huge fortune on a telescope either. You just get, whatever you can afford, and you can see a lot on the moon. It's the great thing about it is so close to the Earth, so
that's
it's right there. You can just have a look. But you do wish that you could go, okay, now I'm getting into the rocket and I'm just going to go where I've been looking, But so I hope that's given you a bit more of an insight into the moon's surface and development.
And also very important study for, like we talked about before, future moon bases or, possible sites, things like that. I'm sure that's in there as well.
That's right. And whenever something, we get information like this, it always, provides information for other areas of study, like you mentioned. If we know that there's an old volcanic plain here, we know perhaps that the soil is like this, and then we know that maybe that is a good or not a good place to land a future mission or set up base, and etc. So there's always extra information that you can get. I guess this one was just looking at how we can age the surface of the moon and perhaps other planets. So, but yeah.
Awesome.
All right, Lino, my new bucket list goal is for all of us to do a podcast from the moon one day. There we go.
Oh, wow, man. I'm just blown away with Caroline when you said about, how old the samples are. The youngest, when you say billions or millions of years, that is, oh, wow, that's the youngest? Just the way the word billion and million comes to me.
That's the youngest we've found so far. We know that the moon has been geologically active for 3 billion years, and then we know it has been geologically active for about 2 billion years, and that's as far as we've managed to get so far. But isn't that amazing just to learn that about the moon?
Exactly. Oh, wow. Hey, I got one question, Caroline. This is a bit of a new question. We can't get quakes on the moon, have they? Do you know that the moon is like made of the substances to make a quake?
So it doesn't have tectonic plates like the Earth has, but the Apollo missions have detected moon quakes. So they have put seismometers on the moon, and they felt like 3s and stuff like that. So they have even on Mars. Mars doesn't have the same tectonic plates as Earth, but you do feel Mars quakes. So they're still learning about how the quakes occur. It could just maybe be creaking rocks. We're not sure, because the Earth is being pulled gravitationally by the Earth, so that would have an influence on it. So you could imagine it probably would move, like we have the tidal waves from the influence of the moon. So there would be some, perhaps I'm just guessing, some reciprocal kind of influence on the moon. So, but this is kind of fun stuff to think about, really, isn't it?
No. Just a question.
Yeah.
And what I love is we talk about the mysteries of the universe and the billions of years old and everything, but we've got one right in our doorstep. But almost, becoming slowly more and more accessible to get to. But the just as a side note, the Artemis missions, the official date has been set for February for the first Artemis mission. So this will be an unmanned rocket with a capsule. I think it's like a test run, Caroline, if I get it right.
Yeah, I think
where
so.
they're going to send up the capsule, orbit it around the moon, and I think then bring it back. So this will be in order to be able to approve it for human use in future Artemis missions.
It feels kind of Apollo again, doesn't it? Like
it does.
It's so good. I mean, it's happening in our time, probably with a bit more computer power and a bit more knowledge this time. But I mean, what they achieved in the Apollo missions, I can never stop raving about. I mean, how they managed to do it with such, I guess you could call it now primitive technology, and all the calculations they did, and kind of doing a lot of it blindly,
Yeah.
Wow.
But because it's never been done before, I say that. Yeah. But now we've done it in the past, so we've got a lot of clues from there and a lot of information from past missions. And to do it now with the technology we have now, it's just super exciting, and cannot wait to see that.
It really is the stuff of adventures. We'll talk about this more in the future as more detail comes out. But the mission to land people on the moon as part of the Artemis mission now will involve the launch of the astronauts on the Artemis rocket, the launch of a Starship, so Elon Musk's Starship, which will already be in orbit. The Artemis mission will launch, its capsule will go to the moon, the capsule will dock with Starship, the Starship will be the lander, and then they'll go back up, back in their capsule and back to Earth. It's such a complex but amazing mission that they've envisioned. Yeah.
Let's see how it plays out now. It's quite interesting to watch.
Yes. Pray for the safety of all those involved as well.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah.
Every time, even when they go up in the Dragon, it's still, it's good and safe, but still you're like, oh, there are people in there.
Yeah, that's right.
Every time.
Yes. And also at time of recording, we wish well and pray for the Crew 3 mission, which is going up this weekend from my understanding as well.
That's right,
yeah. Lots of exciting stuff happening in space and on the moon.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to our final discussion, and we're just going to talk quickly about what's been entertaining us. What have we been doing in our not so spare time when we've been busy and stressed with work and study and everything else? We need a bit of time to unwind. What have we been watching? Caroline, I know you haven't finished all of it, but tell us so far about your impressions of Free Guy.
Oh yeah. So, it's good. I started watching it with my kids. Now, it does need parental guidance because there's a few F-bombs thrown in here and there. But on the whole, it's okay. And I found it really entertaining, and so did the kids. Like, they could watch it on a level that's funny to them as well, because it's about a man who is, what is it called, an NPC?
NPC. So is it non-person, non-playable character? Is
yeah,
that right?
That's right.
Character.
Yeah, you're the PC guy, Lino. You know, you know the lingo.
That's it. I'm not really an online gamer.
Yeah.
So I did learn about it a bit from the film. I guess my kids are more online gamers than I am. But so that's why they wanted to watch it. But yeah, so this NPC suddenly comes to life and he's like, hang on a minute, I want to do what the other guys are doing, meaning the online gamers.
Yeah.
And so in one of the scenes, he kind of, there's like a bank robbing scene. And these are based on things like, what are those games where everybody goes shooting and stealing and all of that? It's
a bit like Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, that kind
of
game. That's the one I was thinking of.
Not that I play it, but yeah.
Yeah.
But I know of it.
Yeah. So you basically have a license to just kind of do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And so one of the players walks into a bank, and his job, this NPC, is to be a bank teller. And he's like, you know what? I'm just going to go and see what happens. I'm going to grab this guy's glass. So if the character has glasses, he's a playable character, sunglasses. He can see points and he can see level ups and whatever. I don't know, whatever else there is.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sounding really like I don't know what I'm talking about here. But it's coming from my perspective, so it's okay.
I'm enjoying it. It sounds like fun though. Yeah.
It's good. And so he grabs the glasses and all of a sudden he's like, oh man, there's more to this than, there's more to this than just me getting up every morning saying hi to my fish and going getting the same coffee every day. So then he starts like, oh, but I don't want to do the robbing and all the bad stuff. So he decides that he wants to be a good guy. So he saves people from being robbed. He gives people back their cars, and all of that thing. And then he starts leveling up really quickly, quicker than the people who are actually doing the robbing and the stealing and all of that. And then the online gaming world realizes, and it becomes a big thing, that there's this character and he's leveling up and no one knows who he is. No one can find out who he is. So then there's these two, I guess they're game developers or something, who make characters and try and get in the game to see who he is, investigate and all of that. Anyway, we only got to halfway through the movie because, young kids' brains don't want to sit there for that long when they know screen time is coming up. So we watched until the designated screen time, and we need to find a time to watch the rest of it. So, but the first half of the movie was quite entertaining, and I do recommend. I mean, adults can watch it fine; it's really not that bad. But for children, perhaps watch with them. But it's pretty good. Pretty
Sounds
fun.
really interesting. Yeah, thanks for that. So as Caroline mentioned, parental warning, watch it with your kids if you're going to, or if you're a child who's listening, watch it with your parents. Yeah. Ask them first. They'll watch it first and decide if it's appropriate yet.
That's right. And if you like Mariah Carey, you'll like this movie.
As long as she doesn't sing anything from her Christmas album, I'm quite okay with that.
I haven't heard anything from the Christmas album, though. But it's a clever use of one of her songs, so pretty good.
Okay, great. Yeah, all right. Have to check it out. Yeah. All right, well, that sounds good. Lino, you recently watched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That's an animated film from Sony, I think. So tell us about that.
Actually, that wasn't too bad, actually. So I had my nieces and nephews, my brother and my sister-in-law over one night for dinner, and so I thought, they've been watching all these other shows. Okay, I'll try this. Actually, I'm not saying I was surprised. I couldn't believe this Spider-Verse was under the children's section of the Netflix. You choose your profiles. Yeah. I was like, okay, it's rated PG. We'll see where we go. Actually, it wasn't too bad. So basically, you have the normal Peter Parker, but then Peter Parker is trying to fight this other guy who's messing around with. Is it with me or is it with Marvel with their time travel or
their multiverse, different universes,
universes?
Yeah.
So But the bad guy's Kingpin. So some of you recognize him from the Daredevil.
That's
series.
right. Yep.
So he's organized this huge machine to change parts of the universe and everything. And then when Spider-Man touched this part of the machine and whatever was coming in the middle, it created different verses. Subverses of Spider-Man. So far,
and Kingpin was trying to get his wife back, or change things so he get his wife was deceased back. Or something. Yeah,
exactly. He's trying to get her back from the dead. Not from the dead, but save her,
change
things. And so far we've seen I think 3 versions of Spider-Man so far. So there's a normal one. There's a kid. I can't remember. He's more the normal guy. Sorry, the guy in the show. They focus on him.
Yeah, he's the main character, isn't he?
Main character.
Yeah. And what's his character's name? I'm so bad with Marvel.
I can't remember now.
You keep going. I'll Google it.
Yep. Yes, please. And then you have Peter A. Parker. So this is another version of Peter Parker who had a bad relationship with his girlfriend. They got they got married. Had a bad relationship. He went down a spiral. So this is the other side of Spider-Man where everything just went wrong with him. Yeah. So he was drinking and all that stuff and partying and everything. He just couldn't care less what was going on.
A bit less positive about life. Yeah.
Exactly. Like if something's happening, I'll just do this. You do that. So there was another side of Spider-Man. I think there's more of them coming
Yes, that's
soon.
right. There are more. Yeah.
Yeah. So more. So also hilarious. My nephew, it was during the week. I mean, sorry, during a weekday. So work the next day. We had to stop it because there was another hour of it. I was like, goodness, man, that's one thing I always forget. Look at how long the movie is. Yeah. And it's like, this is Marvel. It usually come like 2 hours or something. Yeah. So we had to stop the poor thing for the show. And he's going, no, I don't want to stop now. Justin, we have to stop because we got work tomorrow. Well, my brother and my sister-in-law have. So we had to write down how long he got left to go on the show. So he got look at the number. You got an hour and something, an hour and 10 minutes left to go. I was like, oh my goodness me, that's so long again. So an hour and 10 minutes to watch it. So you can watch it later on. Yeah. So it's all good. It's all good. But it's a good show to watch, guys. I was just wanted to see how it goes. I've heard about it. And I thought, I'll try it out. I'll give it a, but it's pretty cool. In my last one, I have to tell you guys, Star Trek Lower Decks. Oh my goodness!
Yeah, you've been watching that now, have you?
Caroline, you have to watch it. It's so good. I had to explain some of it to Bernadette because some of them were referencing to different Star Treks.
There are so many references.
She's only seen the original.
Yeah.
So some of the original stuff she understands. Some of the Discovery stuff she sort of understands. Yeah. But I was so laughing. And then we came to that episode, Lindsay, you were talking about when Bomlier is his name? Boiler. Boiler. He gets his mate wants to do transport thing.
Oh,
and see how fast he want to do it from by the boy. Yeah. And he ends up coming back, but the sound of the
he's still he's not fully transported. Yeah. So he's walking around making the noise and he's like all blue.
All through and all throughout the show he's going through
that was hilarious.
Oh, Caroline, you have to watch it because there's little references of different Star Treks in there.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really enjoying it. Yeah. I think we're up to that episode where I forgot that Boiler didn't know that. Who's the girl, Lindsay?
Yeah, Mariner. Yeah,
Mariner is
Boiler
the daughter.
Captain.
Is the daughter of the captain.
Yeah.
Boiler didn't know that until now.
Great. I love the reveal of that.
The reveal of it. Yeah. So there's little references in there, and every character has places in the series, and it's good, but it's very witty. It's very quick.
Yeah.
So I have to again. I go, wait a minute. Okay, I'll rewind. Okay, you were just joking about the Borg. Okay, we'll just keep on going. Yeah. It's very, very quick, and it's pretty good. It was pretty violent, I must admit. And I like it when they do bleep out the swearing, but it was swearing.
definitely not one for kids. There are episodes now and then that you have to watch it first before you show any of it to your kids. But there are episodes that you can watch with children. You just have to watch first. But there's a couple, but because it's adult comedy, definitely not one for young people all the time though. Yeah, which is unfortunate. But I guess that's their audience who they're aiming at. But I do love, in that episode you talked about, there was it was another episode, sorry. There was one where they made jokes about Star Trek Voyager because Captain Janeway does this program where she learns under Leonardo da Vinci in the holodeck. And so they do this one where...
What was with that?
Yeah, but that was part of Voyager. But so they've got the characters and they're skeet shooting, shooting on a range with Leonardo da Vinci. They're doing that. And there's this bit at the end where they had this holodeck program and there was an evil version of Marin or whatever.
Yeah, I saw that one. We just saw it. Yeah.
And then they find the program ends, but because it's like a movie, it has like a twist at the end. And so there's the torpedo tube with Mariner in it, and that's like a reference to Star Trek 2 where Spock's body is like launched in a torpedo tube onto the planet, and she gets up and she's like, "Oh, I returned," and then Da Vinci shoots her and he's like, "Not if Da Vinci has something to say about it." Just these great gags. Yeah, it's just so funny. Yeah,
it's just
great one, Lino.
Yeah, like a lot of it's like Star Trek references. I had to sort of explain to Bernadette with some of the what's it called, aliens and the situations and the names of some of the ships and some of the
there's a lot of
alien
throwbacks.
Cultures, but I'm not sure some of them are made up.
Some are, but some are from the original series. Some are from the original animated series. Obscure references. Yeah, there's all kinds. Yeah,
it's so good. And I just couldn't stop laughing. I'm sorry, Caroline, and guys, you gotta watch it. Give it a go. It's I know it's on Amazon.
I just need time where the kids are not in the same room.
I
don't have that very often.
It's quite good. Yeah.
I just said. Yeah. I was about to say Amazon Plus.
Amazon Prime.
Oh my goodness, man! There's so many of them now.
There's Pluses, Primes.
Plus now. Yeah,
getting a bit crazy, isn't it?
Exactly. So big.
Thanks for that. Yeah, mine is really brief. Black Widow on Disney Plus, Disney Prime, Disney Plus. That became available to watch now, so I watched that with my family. We had a movie night. We watched that. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good movie. I get frustrated by and I guess it's a Hollywood thing. It's okay, but you know how like when a character is near an explosion and they just like, they bump into they get blown into a wall or something, and then they get up and walk away from it.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, that drives me crazy. There's a lot of that,
Deal
but
with
then,
it, Lindsay. You've just
I
got
know,
to
get over
accept
it. Yeah,
it.
that's it. Just got to switch off that part of my brain.
Yeah,
but,
just enjoy it. Relax.
Just enjoy it. Yeah.
Just sorry, Lindsay. There's something on Netflix about that. I think it's called How Hollywood Was Made.
Okay.
And also there was something about how movies have made us.
Mm.
So
the movies have made us.
Of big blockbuster films, and also
blockbuster.
Films. What was it called? What were they? The guys who just
Mythbusters.
Yeah. This is what Hollywood. This show is about how Hollywood made shows big and how it was true or not. So give that a go if you sit on Netflix.
Yeah. And Mythbusters, a lot of these like Hollywood myths and tests, which is good to see as well. That's actually really good. So look, just very briefly, it takes place after the Civil War film from memory, or is it before? Hang on a minute, let me think. No, it's after. That's right. It's after Captain America: Civil War. And so Natasha Romanoff goes into hiding because of the stuff that's happened. But then she, you can't go into hiding for very long because her past catches up with her basically, and she sort of goes back to her origins a little bit. And all I'll say without spoiling too much is there's a lot of setup because there's some cross-referencing with some things that happen in the Captain America and Winter Soldier series. And I think we're being set up for what's going to happen in the Hawkeye series as well in November. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. But yeah, it's worth watching. Good action film. Some things on the theme of family. How do you know who your real family is and things like that. And I thought that was really good and worth watching. And I've made it all the way through to season 5 of Babylon 5. Babylon 5 has been my go-to when I've and you know what? So the special effects are dated, but the storytelling for the most part is really good. I just enjoy that this epic sci-fi that's been set up and how they go about doing it. The comedy is a bit awkward and forced sometimes, but I love the characters, and I just love that that the series is set up in a world where stuff has already happened. So you learn about the history of what's happened, and the characters are directly affected by that history as well. And I love the development of the characters because of that, and the tension that exists because of that too. So yeah, I've really enjoyed that. I've gone through the Shadow War, the Earth Civil War, all that kind of stuff, and I'm just preparing myself for the reboot whenever that ends up coming out as well. And before we finish talking about entertainment, I have to promise one of our listeners, Dominic, young Dominic, who did ask us to talk about gaming. Our next entertainment segment, our next episode, we will talk about our favorite computer games. All right.
I've been preparing.
You've been preparing. We've been playing a lot of games. I wish that was the case, but yeah, we've been certainly
a little bit
our
of
brains
games.
for games we love. Yeah.
Just a little quick one, guys. I just saw a little clip of let's say Lightyear.
Oh yes, yeah, the Buzz Lightyear movie. Yes,
this is like a Buzz Lightyear movie. I was like, so it's really strange. It's not who's it? Tim Allen who did the
Tim
voice.
Allen. Yeah,
it's Chris Evans.
Chris Evans, yeah.
So he played Captain America. He does the voice for it. But I looked at it. It's pretty cool.
It looks interesting. Yeah, it's like an origin story, isn't it?
Like an origin story.
Yeah, origin story. Typical superhero stuff. Yeah. Yeah, cool. All right. Well, we want to thank everyone for joining us for this very long, when it's been a while since we podcast, we have to get it all off our chest. So this very long episode, 67 of the Catholics of Oz. So before we go, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create this show and produce it for you. Today, we want to thank Christina B, Laura C, Jody S, Sonia C, and Stephen Y. Through their generous donations at sqpn.com/give, they make it possible for the Catholics of Oz and all of the shows at StarQuest to continue. So thank you so much to all of you who are patrons. And if you're not a patron and you'd like to join them, you can do that by visiting sqpn.com/give. And please remember also to continue to pray for us and pray for the network as well as it continues doing what it does. Also, we'd love to know what you thought about today's show. You can send us feedback by visiting sqpn.com/Oz, spelled OZ, where you can find all of our show notes as well, including lots of links about the Plenary Council and about the Chang, what is it? Chang E5? Yeah, 5 Moon Mission. And while you're on the SQPN website looking at our show notes, don't forget the Insiders Club newsletter. You can subscribe there to that one at sqpn.com/about/newsletter. And if you're a North American listener, you can join the fan club by texting StarQuest to 66866. Send StarQuest to 66866. You can also visit the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, to see what shows have been coming out recently and subscribe to them as well. And also, we have a Catholics of Oz Facebook page at facebook.com/Catholics of Oz. You can join us there and share your thoughts about our latest episodes as well. You can also send us an email at catholicsofOz@sqpn.com. Caroline, thank you so much for being on the show today and hope you get power soon.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you very much.
Yes, and shout out to our brother Paul, who is letting you use his house to podcast
thank you,
today.
Paul. He saved
and his
us
power
today. Yes, and his power and my devices.
That's it. He'll send you the bill later.
I like it.
And Lino, Sabol, thank you so much for being on the show today as well.
It's been awesome, guys. Just pray and I hope everything goes well for us here in Victoria and Australia. We're out of lockdown, and people who are listening, just enjoy your life. Enjoy everything you have now, and I just hope everything goes well for us here in Victoria and Australia. So take care, everyone, and God bless.
Yeah, awesome. And once again, I'm Lindsay Sant. Thank you so much for listening to episode 67 of the Catholics of Oz on StarQuest.